If you're like most guitar players, you might think that older is better. We love vintage gear. My house is old, 1965. My amp is old, 1965 also. I'm sensing a theme. So when something comes across my bench that's even older than that, you just know we've got to take a look at it. Stick around. Hey guys, this is Adam from Miller's Custom Guitars, and this is a channel that is all about learning more about guitar, teaching you how to maintain your guitar, service your guitar, to understand your guitar more on a more deeper and more fundamental level so that you can get the most out of your instruments, so you can understand what's going on under the hood, so to speak. As a guitar tech, I tend to think that basically there's no such thing as a bad guitar. There's only guitars that are not set up very well. I think that every guitar has merit, has value in the right hands, in the right scenario. You know, I did a video for one of my customers where I did an overhaul on a pointy guitar, and we overhauled all the electronics and hardware. We took a look at that, and you know, that's not the kind of guitar that I would gravitate to, but that guitar turned out really amazing. You know, I service guitars all the time from all the different varieties of spectrums, from beginner guitars to high-end guitars, and everything, in my opinion, has a place and has a value for its owner. In the right hands, it can be the right tool for its owner. And so I don't want anyone to think that, you know, that I'm bashing new instruments or that I'm bashing cheap instruments, because I'm definitely not. I think that every instrument, every guitar has value, and if you think that you have a bad guitar, is a very high likelihood that it just needs to be professionally set up. And you can take that to a local shop or a local guitar tech and get that thing set up, or you can follow this channel and learn how to set your own guitar up and learn to get the most out of your guitar. But having said that, I will say that there is something, I don't know, special about vintage gear. Now, I'm not going to say that it's across the board, that just because it's old means that it's going to be amazing, okay? Because it's definitely not the case. There's a lot of stuff that was made in the old days, in the old times past, that was junk. Just like today, there's a lot of things made today that is intended to be cheap stuff cranked out to service a budget market that is a lesser quality, and there's a lot of high-end quality. And so there's a wide range of instruments that are made today. It was the same way, basically, as long as they've been making instruments. There were budget instruments, there were mid-grade, there were high-end instruments, as long as they've been making these things. So anyone will tell you, when you grab an old vintage piece of gear, just because that instrument was made in the 60s or in the 50s, doesn't automatically mean that that instrument is going to be some world killer. In fact, in a lot of cases, that guitar might be pretty gnarly. There's a number of reasons for that. A lot of the good ones have gone. You know, a lot of times people don't know what they have, and they don't take care of it. One thing that happens is that if you have a really good guitar and a musician that is playing it, it just gets played and it gets lots of wear, and that happens. Another thing that can happen is inconsistencies. One of the pitfalls of modern construction methods is that we have instruments that are very precise and consistent from one instrument to the other. In fact, I was listening to a video from Rhett Scholl recently, and he talked about PRS guitars, and he mentioned that almost as like a detriment to their brand, that because they were so consistent and precise in their manufacturer, that he felt like it led to those guitars having less character and less of an individual voice to the instruments. And you know, I'm not sure whether or not that's true, but what it does lead to, especially with vintage instruments, is that there's way more of a variety in vintage instruments. If you talk to anyone that works with pickups, they'll tell you that a P.A.F. pickup, like the ones that they die for, you know, the vintage P.A.F. style pickups, a P.A.F. is not a P.A.F. You know, we have a local pickup manufacturer here in town, Patrick from Janktone's Pickups. And when I was over there, he pulled out a vintage SG. And this thing was an early 60s SG. And this was actually when they were still called Les Pauls before they started calling them SGs. And he goes, here, try that. And this thing was, for a guitar tech like me, this thing was just glorious. This thing played like a dream. It had all the relicking and everything. And he makes pickups for a living. And he goes, yeah, I pulled the P.A.Fs out of there because they sounded like garbage. Because that happens with vintage manufacturing. There's just inconsistencies from one day to the next. Some days you'll have a great instrument. Some days you'll have a kind of a junky instrument. That definitely happened with pickup winding for those vintage style pickups. They were very inconsistent from one pickup to the next, from one batch to the next, from one day to the next. You kind of had to, if you're looking for a vintage P.A.F., you kind of might need to go through a couple of them to get to a good one. But having said that, as a guitar tech, when something cool comes across my bench, I want to take a closer look at it. And I've done that a couple times on this channel. We took a look at one of my customers' vintage 1980 Gretsch White Falcon. That guitar was really special. And I took that guitar and that had stereo pickups that you could split with stereo outputs. And I did that on the channel. I ran one half of the pickup to one amp and one half of the pickup to the other amp. And that was really cool. That was one of my early videos. It's still kind of rough if you go watch that video. But I think that the sounds on that one were really cool. And that was a really cool video. Then I can switch pickups. So now I have the middle selection on just the treble. And you know, I talked about the pointy guitar that I overhauled, and you know, every once in a while I have a guitar that comes across the bench that I just think is too special not to share with you guys. And this is one of those scenarios. And guys, you have got to see this because this is really special. You guys got to check this out. Check this out. This is so cool. What even is this? This is a Electro Lap Steel. These were made in the early 60s. It was intended to be played on your lap with a slide, you know, and it has a single horseshoe pickup right here, volume and tone. I've been looking these up online, and there was a couple different styles that they made these. But Electro was made by Rickenbacher, and that's who made this. This was made, Electro, made by Rickenbacher, intended to be played on the lap. It's a slide guitar. I opened up, when I serviced this guitar, I checked the date code on the pots, and the date code on the pots is dated to 1960. These manufacturing companies purchased parts. They would buy them in bulk and then just throw them in a bin. So that doesn't mean this was made in 1960. It could have been made any time after May of 1960. It could have been made that month. It could have been made years later, but we know this was made in the early 60s just because of the date code on the pots and because that's when these were being made. But this thing is basically all original pots, original pickups. I had to replace the jack and the wires. Other than that, this is 100% original. We've got the original case and a lot of the case candy. I don't know how long this stuff's been in there. It's these slides and even some of the original finger picks have survived. I tried to polish these up on my polishing wheel, and this thing is just so stinking cool. And the real amazing thing about this instrument is the condition that it is in. It is just in really, beautiful condition. The paint is just all, there's no chips to the paint. There's hardly any checking or flecking. There's some patina on the horseshoe pickup where the chrome plating is flecked away. But other than that, this thing is in basically just awesome condition. And this was brought to me, the big reason this was brought to me was because the fretboard indication plate, it's not actually a fretboard because the fret, you don't push against it, but this indication plate was completely loose, and so I had to glue that back down. I did a couple other little things, like I said, with the wiring. But then this guitar broke my heart when I was completely done with it, because I absolutely cannot play slide guitar to save my life. I could not play my way out of a paper bag with slide guitar, and I really, really, really wanted to hear how this thing sounded. The sounds I could get from this guitar through my vintage Fender were really good, but the noises I was making were really underwhelming. And I thought, for this channel, I needed to do something really special. So I brought in a ringer, and we're gonna cut to that footage now because I explained everything on that footage. So let's cut to that. Okay, guys, I'm so excited to share this with you because I've been talking about this guitar, and so I got done working on this guitar, and I wanted to play it, and I don't play slide guitar, and I tried, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I went onto the local Facebook musicians group in my county, and I said, can anybody play slide lap guitar and would want to be on a YouTube video? And sure enough, a local musician reached out to me and said, hey, I can play, let's jam. So I am very pleased to introduce you to my new jamming buddy, Kent Resin. And he showed up, and he was game to rock and jam, and he brought some great vintage gear. He has an amazing vintage Fender Champ that is just fire, and it sounds so good. And I was like, I had pedals. I'm like, I have a overdrive and I have a slide pedal, and he just plugged straight in, and he's like, yeah, I don't need any of that, and it just sounds so good. And Kent can really play, especially slide. And
I'm not really a steel player. I gotta admit. But I can fake it because I've never I play blues bottleneck style mostly. So.
Oh really?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you're definitely fooling me because it sounds great. From the second you picked it up, you were making 1,000 sounds that I could not get one sound out of it. But we're gonna play some songs. We're gonna jam a couple songs, and you had an interesting tidbit because this is a Electro Lap Steel, which is made by Rickenbacher, and you had an amazing tidbit about about Rickenbacher.
Well, a friend of mine actually he plays steel guitar, and he the reason I know him is he came to California to go buy a custom-made reproduction of the very first electric guitar that was mass-produced. Was a lap steel guitar by Rickenbacher,
right? Called
the Frying Pan, and they were made out of cast aluminum.
Cast aluminum.
And there was a guy in Oregon who made reproductions, and my friend came from France to go to this guy's house to buy a reproduction of an original Frying Pan guitar, which he plays. The difference was he got an 8-string model instead of it, because the original ones were only 6 strings, so he got it. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's a real player. I just dabble.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna get started. We're gonna play a couple songs that you might recognize, but we're not gonna sing. We're just gonna play the songs and have some fun, get going, and we're gonna get started. Show them how it's done, Kent. Nice. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ken, so much for joining me today. That was phenomenal. I literally can't make 2 notes on that thing. Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure.
And you have a YouTube channel.
No, well, kind of. Not really. Yeah,
go check him out. We'll put a link in the description. What was the name of the YouTube channel? I forgot.
Well, it's Flubus Canubis.
Flubus Canubis.
Yeah.
We'll put a link in the YouTube description below if you want to check out some of his picking and a grinning down there. In the meantime, we'll get back to the rest of this video. Thanks, guys. Wow. Thank you so much, Kent. That was so incredible. First of all, oh my goodness, Kent can really play. Who knew that players like that are just floating around in your town, right? Well, I did, because I've been living in Sonora for a long time. I knew if I put out the call, someone would answer. But holy moly, the sounds he was getting with this guitar and that little champ were just unbelievable. I had pedals lined up. I had my whole pedal board out. I had a compressor sitting there. I'm like, he's going to need a compressor? No, nothing. Every sound he was getting, he just used his hands. He used the volume and the tone, and he had that amp, and we had that thing on, I don't know, 2 or 3. It was not very loud, and that champ just, ooh, chef's kiss. That was just beautiful. I just wanted to share this instrument with you guys because it is beautiful, and it is a real joy when something like this comes across your bench that you can restore it, get it back working again. I did a set of custom gauge Stringjoy strings on this, and I tuned it up to G. And one of the things that I think is really impressive on this thing is how much sustain it has. You just strum it and it just rings forever. It's still going. You can't hear it because it's not plugged in, but I can feel it still in my hands. I can feel it vibrating. And if you set it on something solid like a table or something, it'll just drives those vibrations into the wood, and it actually will continue to vibrate even longer. So this sustain is amazing. The tone is amazing. And this is just a heck of an instrument. So I'm so grateful for my customer that brought this to me, and I'm really pleased that he's going to be getting this back. I guess it was his grandpa's, and they just found it recently. The case is kind of seen better days, but the guitar inside is amazing. Anyway, that has been all for me today from Miller's Custom Guitars. I hope that you've learned something. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you clicked the like button. That always helps me out. And maybe on the old subscribe button, to see other videos. We talk about servicing your guitars, and we also every once in a while highlight interesting guitars that come across our bench, or sometimes we take a look at the guitars that are hanging out at my dad's house. We do a number of things. I'm going to have a whole series coming up. The next videos I'm going to be working on, a whole 3-part mini series that is talking about the nut and saddle material on acoustic guitars. We're going to talk about the cost differences, how to do everything properly, and we'll follow it up with sound differences. Those were my first videos, and we're going to circle back and talk about those again. Anyway, if any of that sounds interesting to you, make sure you hit that bell icon so that when those videos come back, you'll be notified and you'll be brought back here. But anyway, until next time, guys, don't be a jerk.